It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union.
Approximately 61 years ago, and to be precise on 22nd October 1962, John F. Kennedy, the President of US, made an address to the nation. And during that address, he revealed that secretly USSR is constructing nuclear missile facilities in Cuba. Kennedy's address marked the public beginning of Cuban Missile Crisis, during which the world came closest to the nuclear apocalypse. Well, hello everyone, my name is Sahil, and in the today's video, we are going to discuss about those 13 days during which the world's entire geopolitics got drastically shifted. By the way, this discussion will be quite important for GS paper number 1 World History and GS2 International Relations. After World War II, the US and the Soviet Union, along with their respective allies, began a 45-year-long journey for global supremacy, which later came to be known as Cold War. Though there was no direct war during this time, but both the blocs kept on antagonizing each other through political maneuvering, espionage, military coalitions, and similar tactics. The USA had successfully established military bases in both Italy and Turkey, both of which were the allies of USA. And because of this development, USA was able to deploy Jupiter missiles in these countries, which were directly aimed at Soviet Union. Now, Nikita Khrushchev, the then leader of USSR, was looking for an opportunity to get back to the USA for this blatant show of power. And this came in the form of Fidel Castro's revolution of 1959, where the revolutionary forces led by Fidel Castro were successful in overthrowing the dictator Fulgencio Batista of Cuba. And 2 years later, Castro proclaimed Marxist-Leninist government in Cuba, which was backed by the Russia. And in this way, Russia got an ally through which Russia can retaliate on US. Geographically speaking, the Cuban archipelago is just 95 miles south of Florida, and in terms of distance, it is not even half an hour away in terms of flight distance. Because of this proximity, Cuba and US always shared the close diplomatic relations with each other. However, mostly they were dominated by US only. This, however, got strained when Cuba started getting close to the Russia. Now, Castro needed an ally who could help him in protecting his newly formed government against the USA's invasion, and USSR was just happy to help in this context. Well, to be fair, Castro's fear of invasion was not completely unfounded. In April 1961, the US covertly financed the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was aimed at overthrowing the Fidel Castro's government. This invasion lasted just 3 days. It failed miserably, and it was one of the biggest failure of UN foreign policy, and even USA accepted it later. However, the incident later it cemented the Russia-Cuba relationships. Khrushchev decided to deploy nuclear missiles on the island of Cuba in order to protect Cuba from the future interventions by the USA. On 16th of October 1962, the CIA presented to the JF Kennedy photographs of unfinished missile sites in Cuba, which was clicked from a spy airplane. It was soon determined that the missiles could cover a distance of 1200 miles in just 13 minutes, which means many of the prominent US cities such as Florida, New York, Washington DC will be susceptible to attacks by Cuba under the guise of USSR. Now, the JF Kennedy military advisors immediately urged the JF Kennedy that Kennedy should order an invasion on the island. But Kennedy chose a more peaceful and diplomatic approach. And after 6 days, on October 22nd, the US declared that they will announce a naval blockade on shipments which are coming to Cuba. Now, since Russia was transferring the missile warheads to Cuba via ships, Cuba will now not be able to complete the assembly of their missiles. Kennedy chose the term quarantine for this naval blockade, and it aimed at keeping diplomatic negotiations open at the same time. Needless to say, Khrushchev wasn't very happy, and the Russia ships, they tried to creep through this blockade, but they were unsuccessful. And on 24th of October, 2 days after the JFK's announcement, one of the Russian ships turned back. It looked like that Kennedy's gamble has paid off. After this, Secretary of State Dean Rusk famously said that we were eyeball to eyeball with each other, and I think the fellow just blinked. The crisis was far from over. In fact, each side started to prepare for the war. US entered the state of DEFCON 2 for the first time in history, which was just one step short of DEFCON 1, that is, full-blown nuclear war. JFK's military advisor kept on pressurizing JFK to launch a full-blown attack on Cuba, and the evening of October 26th, the first sign of a diplomatic solution started to emerge. What happened? Actually, Khrushchev wrote a letter to JFK, and in this letter he proposed that if US will remove the blockade from Cuba, Russia will also withdraw. Kennedy's military advisors were skeptical of the Russia, and they wanted that no negotiation should be carried. And on October 27th, it was a fateful day, and even it has been called as the Black Saturday. Multiple number of developments happened there. First, Castro was becoming restless and wrote a letter to Khrushchev urging him to attack first on USA. But Khrushchev was still believed that war wasn't only way out in this crisis. He wanted to bypass the laggy and slow communication, and he announced on Radio Moscow that Russia would withdraw if US would remove Jupiter missiles from the Turkey. In the meantime, again that day, a US spy was trying to take photographs of the Cuban missile sites, and during that, the pilot Rudolph Anderson was shot down when he was trying to capture those photographs. After this incident, Kennedy's advisors, they urged him strongly that an airstrike should be launched against Cuba, as it is outrightly an act of aggression. JFK, however, with the help of his brother Robert Kennedy, drafted a letter which was addressed to Khrushchev. The letter said that he would withdraw Jupiter missiles from Turkey and would pledge that they won't invade Cuba. But in turn, Russia has to remove the missiles from Cuba, and USA's withdrawal will stay secret so that NATO allies aren't offended from this USA's action. Russia had to simply believe USA in this particular direction, and if this offer will not be accepted, then the war is unavoidable. Now, Robert Kennedy, while he was delivering this letter to the Russian ambassador, that is Anatoly Dobrin, in that time, a news broke out that one of the armed Soviet submarine has been attacked by the US Navy ship while it was trying to locate its location underwater. The commanders of the submarine, they were not able to communicate with the Moscow as what is to be done. They thought that the war between US and Russia had broken down. Now, in this particular direction, they decided that they could launch a nuclear attack on US, but this decision was to be made unanimously. The captain and the political officer, both of them voted that they could launch the attack on USA, but third in command, that is Vasily Arkhipov, he voted against it, and his discretion saved the world from the World War III. President Kennedy had been informed that if there would have been any nuclear war between US and USSR, then it would mean that 1/3 of the humanity would be lost, and the deaths would be concentrated in US, USSR, Europe and China. And similarly, Khrushchev also received the similar reports. With this background, the morning of October 28, Khrushchev again took the radio Moscow and he stated that he is dismantling nuclear missiles from Cuba. Kennedy immediately responded to Khrushchev calling out on this important and constructive contribution to peace. Now, it is to be noted at that point the dismantling of the Jupiter missile wasn't made public, which made Khrushchev look like that he had seemingly lost the arms race to the USA. On the other hand, withdrawal of the navy by the Khrushchev was met with strong resistance and anger from both the advisors of JF Kennedy as well as his countrymen. But both the Kennedy and Khrushchev, they took every possible step to avoid the full-fledged conflict between US and USSR. The Cuban Missile Crisis has revealed that how fragile is human politics and how just a small misconception can potentially unleash the nuclear battles. Thank you everyone. This is all from my side. Take care.